So, day one of contact in the desert at the Renaissance Indian Wells Resort and Spa. This should be interesting.
Yeah, they consider you.
There were 5,000 people at the Contact in the Desert conference out there. All these people that I encountered were thoroughly deceived and into, DMT is the big thing right now.
We thank Joe Rogan for that one.
Well, and others, ayahuasca being, as I understand it, the most potent.
Let's jump over for a moment to the Amazon rainforest, where a powerful visionary beverage called ayahuasca may be consumed. As a researcher, I have always felt that I have to get my boots on the ground. There's no point in me sounding off about something that I haven't experienced myself. And back in the early 2000s, while writing a book about shamanism, it became important for me to drink ayahuasca. So I went down to the Amazon and had my first 11 sessions with ayahuasca there. Those sessions were so transformatory. The teachings that I received from them were so important and marked a fundamental turning point in my life that I decided to remain enrolled in the school of ayahuasca. And as a result, I've now had more than 70 journeys with ayahuasca. And therefore, can... Thank you. I know people who've had many more journeys than 70. It takes great fortitude. But I can speak from some level of experience. And what I can tell you is it's very normal in ayahuasca visions to meet intelligent entities who often take the form of therianthropes. That is, they are part animal and part human in form, and who communicate with us telepathically and give us teachings of great importance in our lives. For anybody who's not drunk ayahuasca, especially if they're a scientist like Richard Dawkins, that must sound completely lunatic. But for anybody who has drunk ayahuasca, it makes perfect sense. Another aspect of ayahuasca visions, really universal, is geometry. Everybody sees geometry in ayahuasca visions. And actually, there's been detailed scientific studies of this. Professor Benny Shannon, who's professor of psychology at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, who's drunk ayahuasca about 800 times. Benny Shannon has done a detailed cross-cultural comparison. He's found that wherever people drink ayahuasca in the world, even though they haven't compared notes, they see geometric visions. And this is the case with the Shipibo of the Amazon, who choose to depict in their weavings and on their pottery the geometric aspects of their ayahuasca visions. The Tucano also are an ayahuasca drinking culture of the Amazon. Ayahuasca is in fact so central to Tucano cultural life that each newborn babe will be given a teaspoonful of ayahuasca at birth. And again, this is something that seems extraordinary to our Western ears that have been subjected to the so-called war on drugs for so many decades. But for the Tucano, it makes perfect sense because they believe we're surrounded by an invisible reality, life and the afterlife and the spirits of the afterlife. And that reality is dealing with us whether we like it or not. And we had better be proactive in dealing with it. And ayahuasca is seen as a portal to that spirit world to the other side. Now, the Tucano, like the Shipibo and like everybody else who drinks ayahuasca, see geometric patterns in their visions. And what we're seeing on the screen here is a Tucano shaman depicting the geometric patterns of his visions on the sand of the Amazon River. Any member of the Tucano community can drink ayahuasca, but if there's important work to be done, a group of shamans will gather together and they will drink truly massive quantities of ayahuasca. And I'm going to quote here from the work of Gerardo Reichel Dolmatov, his book, The Shaman and the Jaguar. Reichel Dolmatov was one of the leading anthropologists of Amazonian peoples and of the Tucano in particular. And he tells us that after they've drunk these formidable quantities of ayahuasca, the group of shamans, they're called payes amongst the Tucano, will lie down in their hammocks where they, quote, feel they are ascending to the Milky Way. Once again, that meme of the Milky Way comes back into the story. And again, there's a leap to the sky. The apprentice may only get a foot or two off the ground, but after more experience and more practice, they will be able to rise higher and higher, and so on until at last, in a single soaring flight, he will reach the zenith. So in summary, the shaman's visionary journey through the ayahuasca portal involves a leap, or after sufficient practice, a soaring flight to the Milky Way. And it's said that the individual dies when he drinks the potion, and that now his spirit returns to the uterine regions of the beyond, only to be reborn there and to return to his ordinary existence when the trance is over. So this is conceived as an acceleration of time, an anticipation of death and rebirth. So ayahuasca really is a kind of book of the dead. It's a guide to the afterlife realm, not in written texts, but in direct experience.
You know, my whole thing is I was into martial arts. I haven't shared this too much with people, but I feel like I need to. It's several different forms of martial arts, and one of them was Kung Fu. And I didn't know it at the time, but the instructor was gay. And I was going for my first belt. And so, you know, we're going through different kata, different routines and things like that. And he had me come in for a private session that evening before the tournament the next day when I was going to go for my belt and all that stuff. And so we were doing some routines. It was all physically strenuous. And he said, okay, drink this. Now, I trusted this guy. So I drank it. And I immediately recognized that it was some sort of alcoholic beverage. And like an idiot, I continued to drink it. And I was like, you know, I started feeling uncomfortable. I said, yeah, I don't think I should do this. And he goes, did you see that? I forget what the movie was. It was a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, but there was a scene in the movie where his instructor brought him into a bar, got him drunk, and then staged a fight to see if he could still fight while he was incoherent, you know? And I was like, yeah, you know, he's like, well, you know, I'm kind of doing something like that. I'm like, oh, okay. So I bought it and continued to drink to the point where I was like barely being able to stand up anymore and fell down. And all of a sudden he starts rubbing on me inappropriately. And fortunately I was in a position, I was laying on my side and he was kind of trying to get up on me. His face was right here. And I went, boom, like that. I nailed him right in the face. And I don't know if it broke his nose, but it hit him pretty hard. That was enough to get him off me and I took off running. So fortunately I was spared from anything, you know, more than a little of a discomfort, you know, in that situation. But from that point on, I said, I will never get into the position where I am not all mentally there, because too many things can happen to you when you allow yourself to get into a state where you're not mentally functioning the way you need to be. And so for that reason and others, I've never gotten into drugs, but I think about this proliferation of drug use now, and listening to these people, they're all about opening up your higher consciousness through DMT. And apparently DMT, you know, it's the same as the near-death experience type of scenario, where you do open yourself, apparently, from what these guys are saying, to various entities being able to more effectively and more efficiently interact with you and communicate with you and sort of bridge the spiritual veil, if you will. And they use the word spiritual a lot. These people, you know, they're all about getting spiritual.
Also, what Valet also speculated is that we're not just dealing with physical ETs. He always said he would be so surprised if these entities, which we call in our organization non-human intelligence, because they might not necessarily be extraterrestrial. They could be interdimensional, intradimensional. There's so many definitions that are out there, but it could be literally outside of space-time. That's what Vallee was alluding to. An extremely important concept that he said that over 40 years ago, which our book supported. Now, given that fact that we might be dealing with multi-dimensional entities, let's look at what everyone else also said. Spirituality, almost everybody here mentioned that topic. Awakening, almost everybody here mentioned that topic. Transformation. Whitley, I was talking to him earlier before, very briefly, but Whitley is a classic case of the 1,000 people that took our survey. In went a caterpillar. Caterpillar got his ass kicked for quite a while. But at the end, what do we got now? We have a butterfly that knows that he's an eternal spiritual being.
So, I hope.
All the people here on this panel, we don't fear death. Why? Because these, whatever this non-human intelligence did, have worked us over for many, in a negative way that we perceived in the beginning of it. For example, there was a point, I drank for a week straight, okay? Because I couldn't take this stuff anymore, okay? So many people have this. But now, I was a hardcore atheist material rationalist, and they gave me all these certain particular experiences, I'm not going to go into detail, which related to near-death experiences. And now, I don't fear death. I'm an eternal spiritual being. But what did we find? 85% of the people that took the survey said the same thing, and they all turned into butterflies, just like Whitley Strieber. So this is an extremely complex phenomenon, as Whitley and everyone else here has said, and we're just starting to ask the right questions. But they're preparing us. We don't know when it's going to come, but they're preparing us for a transition.
It's not the kind of spiritual you and I would understand, but very much into, their understanding of it. But it was all about Gaia worship. These people, and you got people that supposedly have PhDs and letters after their name and, respected people in various positions of government and industry there with these kind of credentials, talking about Gaia, and when she reveals this truth to us, and we have to be in tune with Gaia, and blah blah blah, so that the Palladians can help us, and the Arcturians, and I'm listening to this stuff, and at first it's kind of funny. You think, wow, this, I haven't seen this many freaks since a Star Trek convention. Then you realize, wait a minute, these people actually believe this stuff. This is a religion for these people.
You come film everything here close. I have no problem. I know some people are really, really, really fickle about that. This is tape it all. This is me in the future.
That's you in the future?
Yeah, I know what I look like. Like I have a clear recall. And this is the technology that this is organized actually.
And I had a big spiritual awakening. So I was like,
reconstitute the crystals, But I put it into the image, Put that together.
Yeah,
I love it when people.
I think that's what the universe sort of had in store for me.
And that's when I began to get really grieved in my spirit. I'm going, Father, wow. Now, many of us as Christians would look at that and immediately be repulsed by it. Think, a bunch of drug addicts and, DMT induced Gaia worship freaks. Okay, that's interesting. You can say stuff like that, but they were talking about certain counselors that were there talking about counseling sessions with children who have autism and other things brought on through vaccinations, right? I mean, we've seen autism and some of these other things happening to children, the statistics going through the roof. Directly, mainstream science wants to deny it, but it's in a direct correlation with the increase in vaccinations. And mercury is a huge component in the alien space race understanding, going back to the Nazis and World War II and the Vimana, even before that, and Indian literature, all kinds of stuff related to mercury. Well, what do you know? We got mercury in our vaccines. We got aluminum and barium and strontium in our skies. And what do you know? When that aluminum, barium, and strontium's in the sky, and that stuff, the microscopic particles start coming down, they cause respiratory problems. So people get sick. So what does the mainstream media do? They say, oh, the flu season's really bad this year, so you better get your vaccination. So then you go get your vaccination because you're afraid the flu season's getting worse, and you inject yourself with mercury, which compounds itself with the aluminum, strontium, and barium. We're turning into freaking antennas. Okay? And we're being loaded with toxic metals that are jacking us up on so many levels and changing us. Now that I'm beginning to really understand how this stuff is working, Genesis 6:12 said that earth and all flesh had become corrupted. Flash forward to the last days, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. Last days are going to be like the days of Noah, the corruption of all flesh, but it gets worse. Yeshua says, except that those days be shortened, no flesh will be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Well, when I look at what's going on with the weather manipulation, that's just a tiny portion of it. That's going to wipe out all kinds of stuff. But they're spraying our skies full of toxic stuff, which comes down on everything.
You want to know why your nose is all jacked up, why your sinuses are all messed up, why you can't stop coughing, why it seems like everyone you know is sick with some kind of respiratory problem? Well, that's the problem right there. That's it. It's not some just random seasonal flu. It's chemtrail flu. This is the problem right here, folks. If you're sick of it, start spreading the word. This has to stop.
It's in the air we breathe. It comes into the water that we drink. It gets on the food that we eat. The insects, the bees are getting jacked up real bad. We lose the bees, it's over. It's, we're done.
A couple things on chemtrails. First off, a buddy of mine, he's in chat, Brother Ray Perkins. He visited Israel. He visited Israel for about 30 plus days. He said while he was there, he didn't see one single chemtrail. I thought that was really interesting. At first you're just like, whatever. But then you think about it. I don't think there's been a 30-day span in the last couple of years. I've been all over this country, and I don't think there's been a time where 30 days have gone by without seeing a chemtrail. I thought that was interesting. But secondly, I think someone like you might appreciate a meme like this. I thought it was kind of interesting. Yeah. Have you seen this one?
I have, yes.
Yeah. I mean, is it a coincidence? Maybe. But it is interesting nonetheless. Wow. Baal, yeah, barium, the periodic table, and aluminum. You got Baal right there, so pretty interesting.
Yeah, they are changing us on a cellular level. The question is, what are they changing us into? And that's a big question. And there's a lot of information that was given out this weekend. These people, going back to the children thing. These women that are counseling these children that have various disorders and stuff like that, these children, if they're high spectrum autism and whatnot, they're not really functional in society. They can't really communicate well with their parents or people around them. So they're kind of in their own mental bubble, like that they can't really communicate well outside. But within that mental bubble, when the counselors start working with them, they've found like a large percentage of these children claim to have friends that they can see, that they interact with. And you press them further, and they basically end up being essentially your classic gray type of description of an alien gray, and other beings. And they're being told that their parents aren't really their parents, that they are like surrogates, that they were brought here for a mission. Their real parents are like from the Pleiades or Arcturus or someplace else, on Andromeda or whatever. They get all kinds of different people out there, and that they're here to help facilitate emergence. What is emergence? Well, when the aliens finally emerge on the scene to reveal themselves.
Hello everyone, I'm Mary Rodwell, not Roswell by the way, just to clear the decks here to start with. I live in Australia, and I am the principal of the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network, which I started in 1997 because I wanted to provide professional support to all of those that were coming to me with their experiences. Since that time, I've worked with over 3,500 families and children. And I'm also one of the co-founders of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, along with Ray Hernandez. What I've been brought into with all of this has shown me an amazing understanding of what contact is all about. With families and children, what I've discovered is, and now is part of my research, and most people know that this is part of it, is that we are having what I believe an intergenerational evolution of consciousness and of being of people who are having experiences. So now I've been working with children that remember being on spacecraft, that remember where they come from in that previous life or their previous origins. They tell me why they're here, why they're helping to raise consciousness, and the jobs of their mission. This is conscious memory, and it has been astounding for me to see these new generations of children, which many will give them labels as ADHD, Asperger's, dyslexia, and I found that they're not dysfunctional, they're just wired differently, and they're wired into the multidimensional consciousness that we all have, and for them it's natural. So I've gone from not only supporting those that have had encounters and have gone through often an amazing process to a whole new understanding of what their contact's about, but also understanding that it seems that each generation has become more aware, more conscious of who they are, and connected to these intelligences that are visiting this planet. And of course, the variety of beings that are visiting our planet as well. So my job really is to listen, to help people through the process, and with hypnosis help them understand what's been going on that other level if they need it, and also to support them as families with children that are saying, "Mum, I'm not from here." And I'm finding it really difficult being down here as well with my material body. And when children tell you it's their first time on this planet and that they've picked a mum that's been on this planet many lives before, then you know that you're dealing with a really amazing new generation of what I call star kids. But I think we're all star kids anyway, guys. We're just, some of us are the older models. So in essence, we're not going to be left behind, because these children are bringing in the frequencies to help and understanding to teach us what we need to know so we can change this planet. For me, it's been pretty obvious that disclosure has got to happen from the ground up. So many are coming to me now, and they're coming out the space closet, as I call it. And I just say, are you ready now? Are you ready to tell everyone who you are and why you're here? And the interesting thing is, more and more books are coming out now of people owning their truth, and also through their professions. It's a huge thing if you're a psychologist or a psychiatrist, or you've got a job where you're a respected physicist, to come out and own that truth. And I remember Dr. Lena Olsson, a good friend of mine in Sweden, who's a molecular biologist, and she said the mantis said it's time, because she asked, is it time now for me to come out? And she had an instant healing as confirmation. It was time, and it was very, very scary for her. But it's like the emperor with that you can't, has got no clothes. How many of us are now going to say, you know what, guys, I see these beings, I connect with them, and it's real. If you get enough people saying that, when I get the children talking to me, to them it's a done deal. They've come in to say, my friend comes from a particular star system, it's my special friend. He takes me, or she takes me, to learn things on spaceships and other planets, and they have no problem with owning what's going on for them. But the interesting thing is, I don't believe it's us and them at all. I think we're part of them. So all we're really doing is owning who we are, because so many now are saying they come from different star systems. And when we talk about the big shock to this planet, they're working with consciousness, human consciousness. So whether we're aware of it or not, things are changing. There are people that have changed their lives from 1 minute in a materialistic focus. All that matters to them is the next car. And almost overnight, they'll have something happen. And then they are wanting to take care of the planet. They found themselves connected to everything and everyone. They become powerfully empathic. This is happening globally. I get emails from all over the world, from Uruguay, China, Russia, to Alaska, and they're telling me my life has been this, and I'm finally realizing what it means. So we're already changing. And these new children coming in, they'll tell me what star system they've come from. They'll tell me what their mandate is. They'll tell me that they can communicate with animals, plants. They tell me that they have come in to teach us. And we don't understand yet that there's this huge program that is coming to me through my research, that this planet is awakening, and we're the part of that. And it's everywhere, and every one of you that stands up and says, well, I'm part of this, you're empowering somebody else to do exactly the same. So all I can say is speak your truth. Do you know what? I really don't care what anyone thinks of me. I'm far too aged to even bother. To be honest now, the only thing that matters to me is the truth, and the only thing that matters to me is that we support each other to find the truth and to be who we really are. What I'd like to say is something that I was told by an 8-year-old young boy. And these are the new children, new generations that are coming in. It's all conscious memory of how they understand themselves. And what was fascinating is how they understand it as a soul journey. And this 8-year-old said to me that he remembers going up on board craft, and he said, he told me before that he was connected to the mantis beings, that they were his ancestors, and that when he dies, he's going back to his mantis family. And then told me about his experience going on board craft, where he evaporates, he said, into this mantid body for a time to do various tasks before he came back into his physical body. And so the other part of this is when I'm told of others that go on board spacecraft, they may move into another form for a time, whether it's in a zeta form or another form, to perform a task. And I remember asking one young woman what she remembers being on the craft. And she said, well, I'm a scientist. I've got certain jobs to do when I'm on the craft in this zeta form. And I said, well, where is your human body? And she said, oh, it's over there to one side. And I said to her, so how do you get back into your human form? And she described this ball of light that she would leave the zeta body and go back into a human body. So this is going on not just with the ones I've mentioned, but many others are saying that they are part of them. We are part of them. And just because we're in this human form doesn't mean this is the only form that we're operating from. So that it changes everything in the way we understand these intelligences. And as Ray and many others are talking about, we're not just talking about extraterrestrials, we're talking about interdimensionals, extradimensionals, transdimensionals, and visitors from our future, and probably many others. And many of them are coming in a form that's acceptable to us. That doesn't mean that that's what their true form is as well. So much of this is complex. But what I would say is that what I'm hearing from the children particularly, they're not programmed, they're not front-loaded, and they're telling me that many of them remember coming here with a job to do, to help us, and they're coming from many of these star systems. So instead of separating this all out as an us and them, I think we have to see that as a cooperation of consciousness, of not just our present human awareness, but the consciousness of all that we are as a species, but also connecting to these galactic intelligences as well.
So true.